Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Dawn of War Unification mod video. A while back I had mentioned that the Unification mod has a massive amount of different playable races and factions. So I wanted to take the time and create a series dedicated to each of the races and factions in a playstyle faction overview type of series. And why not start off with one of my favorite playable factions so far, the Imperial Fists. The Imperial Fists are steadfast defenders of the Imperium, experts at siege warfare who know their guns and fortifications better than other factions. Yes, this is a Space Marine faction, but they will play differently to the vanilla Space Marines, so let's not waste any more time and jump right in. Of course, like every other faction, the Imperial Fists have their own HQ, known as the Siege Control, and yes, the word siege will pop up here a lot. The Siege Control is your multi-purpose HQ, where you're able to recruit builders, your basic units known as Siege Marines, increase your population cap as other Space Marine factions, but also be able to recruit certain command units too, including some specialist tanks. Your faction builders, the Tech Marines, will have access to two different building icons. The first will focus around all the stuff relating to your armies, buildings to recruit them, upgrade them, and so on, alongside your tanks, your specialist characters, such as Rogal Dawn, and even some unique styled units which are available on the tabletop. Yes, the Imperial Fist will be able to recruit some Primaris units in Unification mod. The second building icon will focus around defenses. If you're familiar with the Imperial Fist lore, you'll know that they're very much focused on defenses, so here you'll be able to build up your towers, some relays, and even a bunch of walls. One quite impressive tower is the Hammerfall Bunker, which released for 9th edition. This has two different active weaponries which you can switch around as you please. The Imperial Fists have two ways of acquiring Requisition. Of course, the very basic one and standard for most races and factions is that of sending units to acquire any Requisition points. After capping them, you'll be able to obviously build up some listening posts and try and drain those areas of resources. However, the Imperial Fists are also more of a defensive faction rather than offensive, meaning that going around and capping locations might not be so easy early on. Because of this, many of the Imperial Fist buildings, even the unit recruiting ones, will also allow you to gain a small number of resources. The more you build, the more extra resources you will acquire. You'll also notice on screen that we have been hovering over something known as Fortify. Now, Fortify has a multitude of different uses for the Imperial Fists. Firstly, it will help boost up the defenses of your various different buildings, allowing them to take much more punishment when your enemies start attacking you. But fortifying your listening posts will also grant you extra resources, so naturally building up your fortifications, especially on your listening posts, will prove to be very useful. It will also make the listening posts much more durable, so you'll be able to use it as a frontline turret. Your main way of getting the power resource, something which will become very much needed for the Imperial Fists, is through the Siege Generator, which acts in a very similar way as to all the other generators for all other races. However, it is important to note that there is only one Siege Generator per Siege Control, meaning that this will indeed get targeted. Fortifying it will of course make it more durable, but don't allow it to be caught out in sight, as enemies will surely start to aim for it if it's undefended. If you've already played the vanilla Space Marines for Dawn of War Soulstorm, you'll have no issues revolving around the armory. This is where your main forms of upgrades can be found for your units, and everything is very much in a very similar style to that of its vanilla race. Other than the Siege Control, there is another building, the Orbital Elevator, which will allow you to recruit different HQ style units. Not only will you be able to recruit apothecaries, chaplains and librarians, but with this and also getting the relevant upgrades and a relic, you'll be able to recruit Rogal Dawn himself, the Primarch of the Imperial Fists. The Hand of Dawn building will serve as your main recruitment building. This building will have all your different types of Space Marines, from your gunners to your melee, Terminators of course, and even Primaris Centurions. The grand majority of the units here are gun focused, but this is what the Imperial Fists are known for. You won't have a lot of access to mechs such as Dreadnoughts. They're still available here, but the Imperial Fists are more known for their shooting attacks more than having a giant Dreadnought going in melee style. Your heavy armor fortification building will be where you will recruit your Dreadnoughts and your tanks. Like I said, Dreadnoughts not too important for this faction. However, you will have access to a large variety of different vehicles, which will all synergize quite well with your Space Marine units. Your supporting heavy fire will be extremely useful when you decide to start pushing out. Bear in mind that the tanks themselves are a bit on the expensive side when it comes to power. You won't get these tanks very early on, so don't rely a lot on vehicles here. They are your support, not your main punch. Again, those used to playing the vanilla Space Marines will also know that the Orbital Relay building will work more or less the same way. The only real difference here is that you'll have more Imperial Fist focus units. This is how you can launch some units as drop pods behind your enemy lines, which eventually will be a useful tactic for you when you start invading enemy camps. Finally, we have the defensive structures, walls to protect the entrances to your base, which will be very useful if you're fighting around areas which have certain checkpoints. They can take a decent amount of punishment and protect your soldiers as you fire back. The Hammerfall bunker, as explained before, has different types of weaponry, which is all used by a toggle. Of course, it can also be upgraded even further and prove to be quite a valuable asset in both offensive and potential offensive builds. And of course, we also have access to the basic bolter turret, which can be upgraded to be anti-armor. This is something already there with the vanilla Space Marines, so there's no use explaining it. A rather good way to learn how to play as the Imperial Fists would not be against the basic AI or jumping straight into multiplayer. In fact, the way I've learned how to play the Imperial Fists is actually by using the survival system implemented through Unification mod. This is a new type of game mode where the enemies will send constant waves at you and you'll eventually have to work your way to attack them. The reason because of this is the fact that the Imperial Fists aren't too offensive at the very beginning, especially since your resources can be a tad limited. They are a primarily defensive faction, so you'll want to be able to test yourself against hordes of enemies, especially when you get into multiplayer, as you will of course deal with those rush style players. Being able to get used to the style of defense first and offense later is very beneficial with the Imperial Fists, or at least through the way that I've learned to play them myself. Capture some strategic locations and build some towers there. If you're sure that your enemy will attack you from certain locations, building up fortifications around that area, especially some towers and walls, might prove beneficial. This will buy you some time as you start upgrading or fortifying your buildings in an effort to gain more and more resources. After a certain amount of time, your resource pool will be fairly large. It might force the enemy to wait before they attack you, which will give you more time to build up a bunch of different units and have them supported by a variety of different tanks ready for you to make your push. Now, of course, there are certain units which you can only recruit either once or through a lock system. There are certain tanks which are tied to Rogal Dawn, meaning that you can only recruit either Rogal Dawn or one of these tanks. Play around and find the playstyle that suits you the best, of course, but I've found that Rogal Dawn himself is actually quite powerful on the battlefield, especially while supported by heavy fire and some Centurions around him. I quite like the Imperial Fists. Their playstyle is quite different to what you expect from normal Space Marines, and it was quite a surprise on how well they were implemented throughout the mod. Of course, this is only one of a massive amount of races and factions that have been implemented in Unification, and eventually we will end up covering all of them. If there's any one of them that you'd like to see them covered next specifically in a video, let me know your thoughts in the comments below and I'll see what I can do. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.